Good day. I'm Martin Gago with Market Radius Research. It's Tuesday, December the 14th, and we've got CEO Aras Azadian of Avicanna joining us today. Avicanna is a developer of science-driven and evidence-based cannabinoid-based medical, skincare, and pharmaceutical products. I've got Aras on for several reasons. I'm interested in only certain aspects of the cannabis industry, namely the ones that have real moats with proprietary technology to differentiate themselves from the rest of the market. Aras has a real science and marketing savvy team that looks like they've got the potential to develop and market successful products. They are ramping the revenues and most recently hit their first $1 million quarter. The company recently raised almost $4 million in equity and has also some institutional research coverage, giving them some runway and market validation and support. But remember, this is neither a recommendation nor investment advice. We're here to learn about the company, do your own due diligence, and come to your own investment conclusions. Aras, thanks for joining us today, and let's hear your pitch.
Thank you, Martin. Thanks for having me, and thanks for those of you who are attending to hear the story. I just want to confirm, Martin, you can see my presentation?
I can see it great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I'll get started. I think the first comment is, by way of background, I am the CEO and one of the co-founders. We started the company in 2016, and we started the company to really solve the gaps we saw in the market, which was a lot of the cannabis industry CEOs and executives were focused on the adult use side, were focused on the stock market side of the industry, but everyone believed in the opportunity related to the efficacy of cannabinoid-based products. And we saw the opportunity there to actually deliver standardized and evidence-based cannabis-based products. And prior to that, my background was biotechnology, management consulting, and management in terms of an executive position. So we brought that background with us. Today, as Martin explained, we are a commercial stage company. Of course, revenues are just starting, but I like to look at the revenues from our business model as a proof of concept and a validation of the intellectual property. The type of products that we have commercialized and we are selling are proprietary, patent pending, sophisticated delivery mechanisms, sophisticated and advanced products in terms of cannabinoids. We do not sell flower. We do not sell pre-rolled joints. We're in the functional, medical, and pharmaceutical business. Our brands are covered within 4 segments, really. Phyto, which is our medical and wellness brand. This is now commercial in Shoppers Drug Mart here in Canada. It's also commercial across a number of the adult use channels as a wellness brand, commercial under prescription use in Barbados and the Caribbean, and in South America and Colombia. So this is all of these commercialization efforts really took place in 2021. It's been a very important year for us in terms of qualitative milestones of getting these products approved, registered, and actually prescribed by patients, for patients by the medical community. Pura is our skincare line. So
Ross, sorry, just to in the Phyto, is that like oils and that you don't sell flour, you don't sell smokable stuff? Those are just oils and extracts?
So they're not just oils and extracts. There's sophisticated delivery mechanisms related to cannabinoids. So they're capsules, tablets, sublingual sprays, emulsions, topical products. So we really look at delivering cannabinoids for a purpose. You know, what's the delivery we're looking at? And there's a slide further down that covers all of this, but we look at the delivery mechanism in terms of a drug delivery. Do we want something to be sustained release, quick absorption? Do we want it to be transdermal? Do we want it to be local? That's all part of this line of products, which is really a formulary or like a toolkit for the medical community to prescribe to their patients.
And are they prescription only, or are they just over the counter kind of anyone can buy it off at Shoppers?
So in Canada, they're offered at Shoppers Drug Mart, which you do need a medical document for.
Okay.
They're also available across adult use channels. So you could walk into specific retail stores in Ontario and Alberta and Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and New Brunswick, and you can actually buy some of these products without prescription, more of a wellness product. But outside of Canada and countries such as the Caribbean region with Barbados and Colombia, they're prescription only. So these are products that a physician has to specifically prescribe. And that's kind of goes back to my initial point around our revenue generation is a massive proof of concept, market acceptance, medical community acceptance, intellectual property validation, rather than just sheer dollars. You know, generating dollars is obviously relatively easier when you're talking about flour or pre-rolls, for example. We're talking about more sophisticated products, which ultimately will have better price protection and will ultimately have more entry barriers and therefore better margins. That also extends into Pura, which is our skincare line. This is a dermatology-focused product line. This line is now commercialized in Canada across medical channels of Shoppers Drug Mart, but also adult use channels again. It's also commercial in Ecuador, Colombia, and recently it's been exported to the United States, where it'll be commercialized there as well. We expect to also extend this line out into the European Union, where it is already registered as a cosmetic. So this is more of a consumer over-the-counter product line. So skincare, eczema, acne, anti-aging, there's a total of 13 SKUs. I will get into the details. We then, of course, have our pharmaceutical pipeline, which is indication-specific drugs. So these are drugs that are manufactured under GMP that have either gone through full clinical development or are going through full clinical development. But in parallel with that, we have the opportunity to register these products and attain marketing authorization in particular markets in South America. I will touch on that as well. And then finally, our raw material division. So we are a Canadian company. Our offices are here in Toronto. Our clinical work, our drug development work, all that was really done here in Toronto. However, in terms of the raw material cultivation, extraction, and in the instances necessary purification of the cannabinoids, we conduct that work in Colombia in South America, where we have built Aureus as a brand. So not only do we produce for ourselves, but we are producing these cannabinoids for other pharmaceutical companies under the brand of Aureus. We've successfully exported that product line or that group of products into 12 countries now. So we are really an international company at this stage. Just getting into the corporate highlights, we are a global company. Of course, raw material business is in South America. Head office, R&D, clinical, commercial is in North America, specifically in Toronto. We are, however, active in 13 countries today. Our businesses range from raw materials in terms of purified cannabinoids or extracts to cosmetics, medical, and pharmaceutical. So we're really not involved in the recreational side. We are, of course, generating revenue now. We've seen exponential growth quarter over quarter this year. As I mentioned, this was really our first revenue generation year in real dollars. We hit our first seven-figure quarter last quarter, and we do expect that level of exponential growth proceeding into the future with our more differentiated proprietary and, of course, better margin products given their entry barriers. All the R&D is done by us. So I think we've established an industry-leading scientific platform, and that's a bold statement, but it's one that I can back up. We've spent 5 years on drug delivery with cannabinoids. We've worked with the biggest academic and clinical institutions in Canada, namely UHN, UFT, SickKids, etc., and I'll cover that. And we've developed all this intellectual property in-house for Avicanna. So as a biotech company, as a biopharmaceutical company, we have already commercialized 30 products from our lab. And I'm not talking about flower, we're talking about proprietary and advanced products. We are part of a Johnson & Johnson incubator called JLABS. And this is very, very important for us. Johnson & Johnson is, of course, one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, and they have an incubation system called JLABS here in Toronto, also in other parts of the United States. We have been part of that since 2017, where we've had access to mentorship and support. And then finally, the low cost. Yeah, go ahead.
With the JLABS and Johnson & Johnson, is it sort of a science WeWork kind of a situation where you pay rent and you work in there, or are they real sort of sponsors or equity owners in any way of you guys? What does that relationship actually kind of look like?
So they don't have any equity. They don't have any rights of first refusal. They provide more mentorship, support, of course, infrastructure in terms of lab. So it's a 40,000 square foot lab space that we conducted a lot of our R&D. We had a cannabis research license issued by Health Canada within that space as well. The other thing they've added for us since 2017 is credibility. You know, in cannabis, you're always fighting against stigma, especially in terms of taking a biopharmaceutical approach. So through J&J, there's been a lot of introductions. Through the credibility of the J&J incubator, JLABS, we have been working with some of the biggest, academic and clinical institutions, some of the top key opinion leaders. So they've been extremely supportive in the support, mentorship. They monitor a lot of our trials and provide, again, advice, but they don't have an equity position in the company.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, so the last part is, of course, the vertical integration. We're organic certified in South America, in Colombia, and I'll touch on the vertical integration, why we chose that infrastructure. But getting into the scientific platform, again, something that I'm very proud of. This is really where the company was incepted from. It is, the thesis behind everything we've built in terms of the company, the organization. Today the company has about 10 PhDs or MDs that are full-time in the organization, and we continue to obviously innovate, develop, file patents. This is now 9 pending patents, so this deck is a little bit outdated. We move pretty fast. Over the last year and a half or so, we've had about 7 government-issued grants, which are peer-reviewed grants, meaning the Canadian government in some way or some capacity supporting the research that we're doing with non-dilutive, obviously, financings. We've worked under 4 Health Canada issued R&D licenses. We're not an LP, we're not a licensed producer. We operate as more of a biopharmaceutical company in Canada. And I mentioned earlier, 30 products have so far come from our lab into the commercial market. In the biotech world, that's quite rare, to be able to put out 30 products. And I think that really speaks volumes around the company, the credibility of the scientific platform, but also the fast route to market that cannabinoid regulations allows at a global level, really. From the research institutes, I think for a small company, we can say a lot here, considering that we have worked with, the top academic institution in Canada, University of Toronto, top medical, UHN. Something I'm personally very proud of, Sunnybrook Hospital. It's one of the most important medical institutions here in Canada. And our products are available in-house, the pharmacy of Sunnybrook Hospital, meaning oncologists can actually prescribe medical cannabis. The patient would walk downstairs to the pharmacy at the Odette Cancer Center, and the only cannabis products they can pick up from the pharmacy are Rho Phyto. And I think, again, that speaks volume around the credibility of the organization and the consistency and the quality of the products that we're delivering. Of course, we work with some of the other major academic and clinical institutions where we have a number of different clinical trials and projects with. From a clinical side, we've already completed all the skincare dermatology trials under cosmetic banner across 3 products: eczema-prone skin, acne-prone skin, and anti-aging. We currently have the Rho Phyto products enrolled in a number of real-world evidence studies across pain, sleep, anxiety, and we're going into a rare disease epidermolysis bullosa study. And then on the pharmaceutical side, we're taking that information, the data, the results from the studies, but also from the commercialization efforts, inputting them into our studies, and we are now proceeding into more advanced pharmaceutical clinical trials as well. So the model here really is commercialize, get data, optimize the clinical protocols to ensure a higher probability of success within that FDA Health Canada clinical trial pathway. Getting into the products, I think we touched a little bit on them. So Rho Phyto, this image sort of answers your questions. They're more sophisticated medical delivery forms, oral, sublingual, transdermal, and topical. These formulations have gone through what we believe is an advanced drug delivery system, meaning formulations that have undergone pharmaceutical development, stability, preclinical studies to ensure that the targeted delivery that we're looking for on the cannabinoid-based products are there, and then validating that through in vitro and in vivo studies, meaning animal studies, which are generally conducted with our academic and clinical partners. In total, it's about 20 formulations of CBD and CBD THC. Today, as I mentioned, they're commercial across 3 countries, Canada, Barbados, and Colombia. In Canada, through adult use channels and medical cannabis by Shoppers. So this is really the Shoppers Drug Mart side of it. We have in total now, I think about 13 SKUs with Shoppers Drug Mart. We have about 8 SKUs of Rho Phyto with Shoppers Drug Mart. The products are doing very well. We've established sort of a leadership position within that channel. Again, considering that we're not a licensed producer, this is predominantly done through the proprietary and advanced nature of our products. As I mentioned, through Shoppers, we've also launched a model in which we're supplying major Canadian hospitals. So this was the first time that we know of a medical cannabis brand or medical cannabis offering was available in a pharmacy in Canada. So something, again, that we're very proud of as a small company, we've been able to accomplish.
Aras,
Yep.
sorry, just if you could just go back to that. What do on this, the Rho Phyto, you've got over 20 formulations. Is there like Health Canada approvals attached to it? Like you seem to do a lot of internal testing and so forth. Is there sort of third party peer reviewed kind of Health Canada validated stuff, or talk about that sort of go to market? What all needs to be tested and validated before you take out a product?
So look, when you take a pharmaceutical pathway, you have to go through technical manufacturing, so R&D, making sure the product does what you want it to do, making sure the product has stability data. Then you tech transfer that product into a pharmaceutical manufacturing facility. You do your pilot studies. Once that is done, you take that drug and you go into full clinical development, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Medical cannabis doesn't require that. Medical cannabis, the standards are actually quite low. So to be able to produce a product and sell it in Canada, your product simply needs to meet Health Canada standards of analytical testing, meaning aflatoxins, mycotoxins, microbiology, the accuracy and the potency of your product. And that's about it. So that's why you have a lot of products in the market, but that's also precisely why you have a lot of what we call basic or elementary products in the market, because you don't have that standard that is required. Health Canada for medical cannabis is not asking for stability studies, is not asking for in vitro or in vivo data. Therefore, a lot of companies have commercialized. We, on the other hand, have taken these products through that pharmaceutical development pathway and then have transferred them into the medical cannabis system. So in some ways, we always say this, we're overdressed for the party. We are putting out sophisticated formulations that are not MCT oil like all their peers, products that have better stability, better bioavailability, better accuracy, and therefore the physician and the patient can have a little bit more comfort in using these products, and they can have an outcome that is more reliable and consistent. So this is really the main differentiation factor. If this was a requirement, to launch your product, stability, preclinical, optimized formulations, then you would have very, very, very few products in the marketplace. And that's why I believe RHO Phyto stands up.
And there is no sort of Health Canada validation or anything on it, but the fact that you're in a Sunnybrook and so forth, that's sort of the third party validation. They're obviously comfortable that it's got GMP or equivalent type of manufacturing facilities. It's properly tested. It's a consistent product, and what you say is in the bottle, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty low bar to say that the product is accurate. But I think the reason why it's at Sunnybrook, it's at the leading branded shoppers, the fact that it has market acceptance both from consumers and patients, and of course the medical community, speaks to the quality of the products, the advanced formulations. And the products are approved by Health Canada in terms of medical cannabis or adult use cannabis selling system, but they're not what you would call a drug identification number. Yeah, like a DIN, like your Tylenol that you would buy from a pharmacy with or without a prescription. So yes, I think, and I said this earlier, I think for us, the fact that we are generating this revenue is great for the shareholders that are specifically looking at just revenue, and it's going to have better margins than your recreational products. But what I think really is important is, as a biotech company, when you look at it that way, these early revenues are just a proof of concept, a validation of the intellectual property.
Are you able to make any kind of health claims associated with it? Or how do you sort of convey to the doctors that, hey, this could be good for epilepsy or cancer pain management, or how do they sort that out?
So the short answer is no. We cannot make specific claims to these products. So let's say there's 8 SKUs the Shoppers Drug Mart. I can't say, hey, Dr. X, this is a product that you should prescribe for epilepsy. That's really up to the physician to recommend, prescribe, or some of the pharmacists at the call centers of Shoppers Drug Mart to provide recommendations. But we leave that up to the physicians. What we provide is a formulary. We call it more of a, like in simple terms, as a toolkit. It's a toolkit of products that the physician can then look at. So a physician can, for example, look at our 10% pure CBD, no THC formulation and say, hey, that's the same drug load as Epidiolex, the GW pharmaceutical drug for epilepsy. And they can make that connection themselves. We are not making that connection. Or a physician can look at our deep tissue gel that is designed to deliver cannabinoids into the deeper layers of the muscles and joints and say, hey, that product may be useful for osteoarthritis. In fact, Avicanna is doing a clinical trial on that product on osteoarthritis. So a lot of those connections are made on their own at this stage, and otherwise you would not be able to have commercialized what is pharmaceutical quality products into the marketplace.
Do insurance companies cover any of these products under certain health insurance plans?
So in Colombia, ironically, most of our products are covered by MIPRES, which is an insurance system. So yes, for any most of the products in terms of the patients that have chronic diseases is covered by government issued insurance. In Canada, there are some insurance companies that are covering medical cannabis. So there are some payers that are involved, and I think that's a trend we want to see progress. One of the projects that we are quite involved in is to generate more real world evidence data and data around pharmacoeconomics, so that we can actually demonstrate that this is something that could help lower short-term and long-term disability, could potentially even lower the expense of other medications, and hopefully we can get that really covered. Because right now, going through the medical channel has a lot more work, a lot of paperwork to get there. And then you get there and you're still paying out of pocket. So many patients are saying, well, why am I going to go through this process? I will walk down to my local dispensary and just buy a product. And I think these are some of the aspects that need to evolve within the Canadian industry, is that through the medical channels, if you're going to go through the headache of that, there should be more insurance coverage. And I do believe with more data, you're going to see more insurance companies come on board.
Are any of these products, are there any plans to do like proper clinical trials, phase 2, phase 3, to get a DIN and Health Canada or FDA approval on it? Is any of this in the pipeline for these products?
So the short answer is yes. The long answer is you have to wait about 6 slides.
Okay. All right. And one final thing on the manufacturing, do you guys manufacture the end product, or do you go through like what would it be, a CMO, a manufacturing organization, or who manufactures them and how?
So we in Canada do not do manufacturing because we're not a licensed producer.
Yeah.
In Colombia, we manufacture for the global market, except Canada. So ironically, the only country that does not permit me to currently import my finished products out of all the countries that we're active in is Canada. So in Canada, we outsource manufacturing to partner companies that then follow our standard operating procedures, our release criteria, our brand guidelines, etc.
And then you get third-party testing to make sure that they've followed the procedures as well. The end product looks and acts like it's supposed to.
Absolutely. We also then bring in products into our labs, because we have research and development labs that are licensed to hold cannabis. So we bring it into our labs and we do an internal quality release as well.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. So getting into the next product category is Pura. So this is our skincare line. This is the dermatology focused product line. It's sold as cosmetics in a number of different markets. It's more of an OTC product line using pure CBD, so THC-free CBD. What makes the line truly unique is 2 major aspects of it, or I would say 3. 1, it's advanced formulations, meaning we are combining CBD with other natural excipients to provide a specific benefit. For example, for acne, or acne-prone skin, we're combining rosemary extract, tea tree oil with CBD, and it's in the form of a water-based gel for acne-prone or oily skin. What makes this line truly unique from a second perspective is that we've actually conducted human clinical trials. So this kind of goes back to your question about the clinical studies. We have conducted human level studies on these products on about 55 patients per product line. And those studies went well. We had very good safety and efficacy data. We're in the process of publishing that data today, but in parallel with that, we're in the process of using that data for the marketing and education of these products in the various markets they're in. They are commercial in Canada, as I mentioned earlier, across shoppers and adult use channels, in Ecuador and in Colombia, launching towards the end of this year and early next year within the European Union and also the United States, much more mature markets. There's a lot of CBD products in the market. There's very few that have these advanced formulations that are an international brand. And I believe this is the only line that is backed by actual clinical trials. So this is certainly a differentiation factor. And we spent a lot of years developing, studying these products before we brought them out to the market. Getting into the question at hand, the pharmaceutical pipeline. So yes, we are a pharma company. The ultimate goal is to be a pharmaceutical company. But instead of closing our door and telling our investors that, hey, in 6 or 7 years, we're going to have our first DIN or our first FDA approved drug, we are taking some of those formulations, or at least phase 1 or version 1 of these formulations, and we're commercializing them under medical or cosmetics. But in parallel, we are proceeding down a pharmaceutical pathway that's really separated into South America and the rest of the world. South America allows us to register drugs without full clinical development. And we're in the process of doing so, and we believe we'll have our first drug approved early next year in some of the South American countries, including Colombia, Argentina, Ecuador, and Brazil, a massive market. And in parallel with that, we take the learnings from those products, we take the learnings from the Canadian commercialization, and we are optimizing and proceeding into phase 1, 2, 3 on an FDA/Health Canada level pharmaceutical drug development. But we intend to fund these trials and proceed into that development as a company that is self-sufficient and profitable in 2022. So I think that's the big differentiation factor, is that we have the blue sky pharmaceutical pathway. Yes, we're going to even have early revenues of that in 2022, but all of this is going to really fund a pharmaceutical drug development at an FDA level as well.
Okay.
So the next slide is our first drug. So this is Trunerox. This is a 10% CBD, pure CBD, same drug load as Epidiolex. This product is an Avicanna formulation, Avicanna trademark. Avicanna's raw materials are going into that from Colombia, which means we own everything here and the cost is low. So this product is designed to be registered in the South American markets that I previously alluded to, and it'll be registered as a generic Epidiolex or as a cannabis pharmaceutical that will be very well priced to allow accessibility for patients in the medical community, because $500, $600, $700 a bottle doesn't really work for epileptic patients that are paying out of pocket. So I think this drug Trunerox will be a very good early sign that Avicanna can in fact produce and deliver pharmaceutical drugs, and has already done so in early 2022. And I think the revenues from there will help us in developing and progressing our own pharmaceutical pipeline that is focused on a number of clinical indications. So again, we look at phytotherapeutics or generic pharmaceutical registrations for South America, but in parallel with that, we are looking at orphan drug pathways with epidermolysis bullosa. We've been working on this drug with sick kids for a long time. In addition to that, we're working on a new formulation for seizure and sudden death related to epilepsy. We developed that formula with UHN here in Canada. We're also working on neuropathic pain and local inflammatory pain. So there's a number of different drugs that are progressing within our pipeline. And again, the sales helps fund this, but the sales also gives us data and results that we can use for the clinical development.
Aras, on your Epidiolex equivalent drug, that's $500-$600 a bottle for the Epidiolex. Around what price range would your bottle be at?
So we're looking like somewhere between $50 to $70 retail.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
So it's a very high margin drug for Avicanna.
Yeah.
And it's at the same time, it's a very well priced product for the pharmaceutical distributors, because we don't go into these local markets like Brazil, Argentina, Ecuador. We've already announced Argentina and Ecuador pharmaceutical distribution partnerships. We're not the ones doing it. We're not the ones doing the distribution. Therefore, we're leaving some of those margins for our pharmaceutical distribution partners to actually get out there and do the sales, which we don't want to do. We want to be the intellectual property company. We are already doing the cultivation extraction because we wanted to control the quality and the price. And therefore, now we have a sustainable organic, the slide we're on now, raw material business that funds our pharmaceutical drug development in terms of the input material.
In South America, roughly what kind of margins are you expecting to get on that product?
In the high 70s to low 80s. Like, this is pharmaceutical margins, so and it's because we're able to really bring the cost down, and we're able to make the products accessible, but we have very, very good margins, pharmaceutical margins. And I think that's really the future. 2022, in the second half of 2022, we'll see some pharmaceutical revenue. 2023 will be predominantly driven by pharmaceutical revenue, while the Canadian commercialization is now the medical cannabis, and that will generate revenue, but those are not pharmaceutical margins. They're more in the 40 to 50% range.
Thanks.
We have a very strategic partnership with Al Harrington, who's the CEO and founder of Viola, who's an MBA veteran. We have a very cool partnership with him in terms of a brand called Replay. So we developed some CBD formulations in partnership with him and the team doctors of the Indiana Pacers and some of the world-class trainers. Replay, which is, I'm kind of going backwards, is a CBD topical brand. They're launching in the United States. We're actually launching this in Canada as more of a sports recovery, sports injury brand. Since we already work very closely with Al and his team, we are also commercializing Viola, which is now commercial in Canada across Shoppers Drug Mart and a number of other channels as well. So this acts as a bit of a revenue driver for the company, and we've helped him expand this social equity and minority-owned brand into Canada, which is something that we want to support as a very multicultural team. So this
Sorry,
is just
the Viola, what's the difference between the Viola brand and the Play brand? Sorry, what kind of products are in the Viola brand?
So Viola is more lifestyle, like vaporizers, things like that, where Replay is THC free, topical only for sports injury, sports recovery.
Okay. And what is the partner? It's their brand, their technology, or when it gets sold, you get like a license off of the technology, or you're buying the product and then paying them a brand license. How is that kind of structured? And I presume it's different in Canada than it is in the US.
Exactly. So in Canada, Viola, we manufacture it through our partnerships, we commercialize it, and we pay them a royalty for the brand.
Yeah.
In Viola in the US, we're not involved with state level business. We're not involved with that. Replay in Canada, it's our formula. So it's our formulations. We are doing the commercialization, manufacturing, and distribution. They are then paid royalties for the brand in Canada. In the United States, they do the commercialization, manufacturing, distribution, and they pay us a royalty for the intellectual property.
Gotcha.
So it's a multi-level partnership is the simple way to put it.
Yeah.
Getting into the corporate highlights, the company is very tightly held by the management, shareholders, board, but also by institutions. We've been a very quiet company, relatively speaking, as a more of a biotech R&D stage company. Now we're commercial, so we're out here telling the story. And thanks to Martin, your group, we're here to a larger audience. But we are very, very tightly held. We generally operate as a private company, but we are on the TSX Senior Exchange as a pharmaceutical issuer, as an R&D issuer. Revenue-wise, I'm just showing 2021 so far. From Q1, 280,000 to Q2, 800,000, and Q3, as you mentioned, our first seven-figure revenue quarter. We're seeing exponential growth, and that's predominantly driven by finished product delivery. I like to track and I like to discuss the units of products we sell, because we're not just, obviously a raw material business. We sell flower. We're showing products that are more sophisticated through the presentation that we just did. We sold about 9,000 in Q1, up to 27,000 in Q3. We think we're going to have exponential growth going into the rest of Q4, and 2022 is going to be a much more quantitative year for us. So we're going to see massive growth. We're Canadian, so obviously we like hockey sticks, and I think we're predicting to see that kind of revenue going into it. In parallel, our cost is not going up. In fact, our cost is going down. So I think that's very important that we've sort of completed a lot of the R&D work. We have built a much more efficient system in terms of the operations of the business. And because we outsource a lot of the work in terms of manufacturing, distribution, et cetera, we're able to maintain costs low as our revenues go up. So we do think next year at some point we will be able to demonstrate EBITDA positive and profitability.
With your revenues, where are the out of your lines of business? What's the rough revenue mix between, I guess, Canada and South America, and then the different sort of product lines?
So Canada represents probably about 80% of our revenue today. So okay. South America is just emerging. We are probably about 20 or 30% of all the revenue generated in South America. We're certainly leaders there, and we believe that's going to be a multi-billion-dollar market, but it's still in early stages, where Canada is a much more developed market. We came in with advanced products and are taking market share. So I would say a large proportion of that is obviously Canada, and then within that, I think the products Replay and Viola just launched. Replay's recently launching. So from that million, I would say about 70% of that is through medical Rho Phyto. Okay. And I think those numbers will continue to grow, but you're going to see way more aggressive revenue growth coming from, Viola and Replay as they're launched or have recently launched.
Yeah. And on a consolidated basis there, what is the ballpark gross margins that you're operating with right now?
I think Q3 was a little bit lower because we were just scaling up. We had some inventory of API, like raw materials, that were a little bit more expensive, but we expect the consolidated margins for Q4, for example, to be in the mid 40s. Going into next year, I think we're going to get closer to the 50% margin as we get more efficiencies in place.
Gotcha. Okay.
In simple terms, they're good. They're medical pharma kind of margins.
Yeah. Your loss has declined as you're growing your revenues. There's obviously contribution margin coming out of your revenues going in there. And you said you hope to be EBITDA positive next year. What's your kind of burn rate right now, or how do you see that sort of declining your burn rate as you go into next year?
I think the burn is, or the OPEX all in is probably about, I think, anywhere between 1.5 million to 2 million a quarter.
Okay.
That won't continue to increase. In fact, we expect that to kind of normalize there because, again, we're outsourcing a lot of things. So at that 50% margin, we need to hit somewhere between 3 to 3.5 million revenue to be profitable, which we expect to reach next year.
All right. So you recently raised almost $4 million. And do you think that's going to be sufficient to get you to your profitability stage, so you're self-funding?
I think we're going to look to do another raise at some point early next year. To be completely transparent, there will be a cash need. The difference is now that cash need is very little, and we have a very strong support group in terms of the shareholders, existing shareholders, the institutions and the major ones that are there. They've been there, for the last 4 or 5 years, and now that we're putting up real revenues and we're putting up real milestones, like we have a lot of support, and I'm very, very happy to say that the kind of support I've had, obviously from the shareholder base, to survive a bit of the cannabis industry meltdown, which I think was well deserved for given the performance of the companies. Our problem is that we get categorized as a cannabis company, right? We get thrown, into that bunch where really we're very different at almost every level. But that makes things a little bit harder as a CEO, because I always say we're often too biotech, for cannabis investors, which now probably don't even want to be in this space. But then we're also too cannabis for biotech investors. So we've been sort of that in between world. But I think now that the proof's in the pudding and we're demonstrating, real progress, we will continue to have that support.
Right. And over the years, you've gotten federal grant money and you've raised a bunch of capital. How much money has been put in through all the various sort of funding sources since you founded this?
I would say it's north of 50 million that's gone into the infrastructure. I mean, we probably have about 15 or 20 million dollars in just physical assets, including lands. Like we own some properties in Colombia where we are doing the cultivation. We have a lot of physical assets there. Of course, a lot of our peers in South America probably spend 7 or 8 times the money to have similar infrastructure, but we've done it obviously more efficiently. But that plus R&D plus clinical plus all the work we've done is really why we are where we are now, and we're trading below the money that's been spent, in terms of the assets.
Yep. All right. Okay. Thanks.
I won't bore you with management, but we all come from professional walks of life: biotech, clinical, research, management consulting, marketing, finance, of course. So we're not your typical cannabis sort of connoisseurs gone into the industry. Our board is the same, very professional board. I won't bore everyone here with the bios. Of course, these are all available on our website and in the deck. In terms of the rest of the year, some of these milestones have already been achieved. We talked about launching sort of Biola and Replay. We talked about some of these drugs in South America. We've already accomplished a lot of that. So we will wrap up the year very strong. Again, very qualitative year for us in terms of the milestones we're able to meet. Next year will be much more quantitative as we get into the pharmaceutical drug registration and marketing authorization stage, but also we see more scalable revenues from all of the existing business models. Something I'm very proud of is, again, this slide kind of gives you a visual in terms of when we say we're global or international companies, we can sort of back that up now. You can see the various business models or brands in the markets that they're active in the commercialization models that have been at least opened, the markets that have been opened. As you can imagine, from a regulatory perspective, it's quite difficult to be able to import and export cannabis-based products. We've been able to do so in, I think now, 14 countries. So this is a very good entrance level. We have our, a little pin in these markets, and we certainly have the products and the cost, given that we have low cost Colombian input materials, advanced Canadian formulations. We believe the combination is a very good fit for a global marketplace. And that's kind of the strategy here. Finally, just corporate highlights.
Just scrolling, going back to that, where the yellow pins are with the Aras brand, are there currently revenues into there? Or are those markets that you've targeted, or are those markets where you've received license to sell product, or what exactly?
So with
does a pin
Aureus,
mean?
I can go kind of by brand. Aureus is commercial now in Barbados. We work with a company called Bright & Stokes. They're a pharmaceutical distribution company. They're selling our products through prescription. In Colombia, same. We have a prescription model. We actually do the manufacturing ourselves there of the finished products. We do patient education, patient support programs, and we sell prescription products. Canada, obviously, it's done through Shoppers Drug Mart and the adult use channels. Pura is more over the counter. So Colombia, US, Ecuador, it's cosmetics. So it's sold through retailers. You can buy it from stores, and it's also sold through e-commerce channels. Aureus is our raw material business, right? So that's CBD, CBG, THC, sort of the low cost input material comes from our vertical integration in Colombia, and we're selling that to other pharmaceutical or cosmetic companies globally. So
and the Aureus brand, do you sell the leaf, the flower itself, or do you only you extract the oils or that and then you sell that more purified product?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of skipped through this slide, but with Aureus, we cultivate, we extract, but we actually produce what we call active pharmaceutical ingredients, API. So we export pure CBD, pure CBG, distillate versions of CBD, CBG, and THC, crude or full spectrum extracts of CBD, CBG, and THC. But additionally, we have a very, very well built out genetics program and a standardized genetics program. So we actually sell seeds. So we're actually in the business of selling raw materials and seeds as well into various markets. So that's kind of the Aureus division. We don't export flower. We're not in the flower business in this case.
Right.
I think that's the general sort of summary. To wrap it up, you know, I think the company is in a very, very, very exciting phase. I think we're at the inflection point where the company is now generating real revenue. We're obviously operating at an international level. We've de-risked from, you know, market acceptance, regulatory approval perspective, diversify high margin across a number of different business units. The management team's gone through it all. So experience, obviously. We are an IP powerhouse. We own everything in terms of intellectual property. Disruptive in terms of the technology and the markets. We don't operate in the cannabis sector. We operate in the pain, sleep, dermatology, etc. World-class partnerships from obviously, you know, Johnson & Johnson to University of Toronto, Shoppers Drug Mart, etc. And then vertical integration. So we control our own destiny. So we've certainly carved our own path. We've gone through a pretty difficult process of getting here, but we're at a very, very exciting stage of the company today.
All right. Could you just, I think it's 1 or 2 slides back where you've got your milestones. Yeah, here. And sorry to be picky, that you mean Q4 2021 on the left.
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
That's a typo for sure.
Yeah, that's what I figured. And let's just say for the first 3 or 6 months of 2022, what kind of more specifically are we looking for product launches, or what kind of news releases should investors be keeping their eyes open for?
Yeah, absolutely. More product launches, more markets, some drug approvals, more pharmaceutical partnerships, and then just seeing the increase in revenue. Because if you look at Q3, Q4, you would have seen a lot of product launches, brand approvals, marketing authorizations already. So it's now scaling that up, you know, adding the sales forces into it and putting the marketing dollars to work. Because a lot of what we've done so far has been done without, you know, any real effort in terms of sales. So it's been very, very organic. I wanted to treat it as a proof of concept, see which market really has the most potential from a commercial perspective. Now we see that, and that's where we want to do more another small raise to be able to fund more of an acceleration process now that we already have attained the proof of concept.
All right. Okay. Well, I guess I'm out of questions. I think that was a great overview and dive into the company. As we wrap things up here, any things you want to sort of highlight or sort of end notes before we wrap it up?
No, I think this is sort of an overview. I know it's a lot of information. I'm happy to have follow-up discussions. I think if you read the MD&A, it covers a lot of this quite well. And I would just stay tuned. I think it's going to be a very, very exciting period as we proceed.
All right, Aras, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us. Have a great day, and maybe we'll get you back in a few months and you can give us an update on how things have progressed.
Do you want to take some of the questions from the audience?
I've sort of incorporated them as we were talking along here. So someone does want to know the list of insurers who cover your products. I thought I would just sort of connect you guys by email and do it that way. And unless you happen to know the list of insurers off the top
there's a number, and I will check, and if you can connect by email, answer me. They're all done through Shoppers Drug Mart, so
Yeah.
It's interesting because most of the insurance companies that are providing coverage are only doing it if it's gone through Shoppers Drug Mart, which is a good basis, I think, for us.
Okay. All right. All right. Thanks a lot, Aras. Thanks for taking the
Thank
time.
you.